Hey guys, welcome back to Tactics Talk. Obviously, I'm not Colton. Colton's wife had their baby. We're really excited for Colton. Obviously, he's not going to be here today. Today, I have a really fun topic to talk with you about ground vehicles and how you can utilize them in Star Wars Legion 2.6.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's them! Blast them!
Now, a little warning about today's video. Colton is a significantly better player than me, so take everything I tell you today with a grain of salt. Today, my approach to this video is really trying to give you ideas about how you can use ground vehicles in your army if that's something that you want to do. I don't know that ground vehicles are in a place right now where they're a must-have in a meta list. There are some that are definitely better than others, but today I'm just going to kind of give you a brief overview from each faction's perspective about how to maybe try to use a ground vehicle in that army. If you've been following our channel for a while now, you know that we've launched a Patreon, and on Patreon there are all kinds of different rewards based on what tier you're at, but most tiers include access to a private live stream that Colton and I do once a month. On top of that, we already have a couple exclusive battle report vlogs that are only on our Patreon, and there's also just shout outs and things like that. You get stickers after a certain amount of time. Higher tiers have some cooler rewards. If you jump in at our $20 tier, even for just a month, you get the one of our exclusive green colored mini scoreboards that will just get shipped to you immediately. Or if you hop in at our top level tier, we'll make you a customized token tray. You don't have to support us in that way. We're so glad that you're here just watching us on YouTube. We strive to make really high quality content for you guys, and that Patreon just helps make it happen. I just bought a new dice camera yesterday, and I'm excited to get that in and film this weekend for the next full-length battle report that will come out at the end of February. So your support on Patreon helps make that happen. I want to shout out to Hayden, who is one of our Patreons. He was the first one to hop on. Thankful for you, Hayden. Using ground vehicles in Star Wars Legion 2.6, I think really varies based on what faction you're playing. I think the best faction right now to be playing ground vehicles in is Separatists. Here's the biggest reason why. There are more line of sight blocking ground vehicles in the Separatist faction than any other faction. In the Separatist faction, you have droidicas, you have spider droids, you have AATs, you have the snail tank, and the new menace, the aqua droids. None of them are just like the most, well, actually, I shouldn't say none of them. I think the AAT can be pretty powerful offensively, depending how you're using it. But most of them are not any kind of amazing output. I think the Flamer Spiders have a lot of potential, depending on your list archetype and things like that. But here, I think, is the most beneficial thing from vehicles in 2.6. Moving line of sight blockers. And now with 1,000 points, you can have more of them in your army than you could before. That's the other unique thing about Separatists, is you can take those ground vehicles, line of sight ground vehicles, in the support category, where which you can also do in Rebels and in clones. However, the droidicas are able to block more with their multi-model unit, are able to block a larger area of space. So if you were just building around line of sight blocking with your ground vehicles, you could take 3 units of droidicas and 2 units of aqua droids and just create massive line of sight blocking walls for B2s, for Geonosians, for Count Dooku or Grievous or Maul even. You can really do a lot of line of sight blocking with fairly cheap units. You also have the transport option with the snail tank. The snail tank is one of the largest line of sight blockers in the game, and it still has a pretty decent offensive output, especially with attack protocols. So today we're going to kind of look at some things on the table about how to use those things based on each individual faction. So first up, is Shadow Collective. I kind of got the idea for this video in my last full battle report game with Travis, where I did this. Gonna activate CAD, rally, doesn't roll any off.
He's Courage 3.
Courage 3.
Nice.
We will get cheeky though with our steady. And we will
move in such a way you can hopefully get a shot off. Which is gonna probably be likely.
Yep, so CAD is going to activate. He will jump to there. And then he will pop a steady shot.
Shoot some clones in the open.
Yep, and then he's gonna come back to there after that shot.
It's great.
3. Hit.
So we roll 3. Clones, spend a surge,
Yep.
take 1.
Pairing a unit that has steady or relentless with a ground vehicle can be really, really powerful. The new rules in Star Wars Legion allows troopers to move through vehicles. So now Han Solo, Sabine Wren, Bad Batch, Cad Bane, fill in the blank relentless units, fill in the blank steady units that have a powerful ranged profile can now teleport through the side of a bus and back out again. So on our table, you could have a bus here, you could have Cad Bane here, and our speed 2 movement tool is going to clear that base. That's going to be enough to clear the base of the vehicle. Cad Bane could pop out, shoot at range 2, and pop back over the bus. That's a super easy one. That's fairly obvious one. But today I also wanted to talk about other units that you could utilize with kind of a shoot and then moving the vehicle to a line of sight blocking position. Now, with Shadow Collective, you have to think about order control, and that's one thing that Shadow Collective doesn't want to do. I think that if you're trying to run Shadow Collective right now, you probably want 2 buses, and I think there may even be, not with Shadow Collective, but in Rebels we'll talk about maybe running the buses without weapons on them just to get a higher activation count in there. That's one of the things that we've seen from the Las Vegas Open, is that seemingly higher activation count lists are performing better. But in this scenario, let's say that we have some Black Suns already out on the table. Let's say that they moved onto the table, or maybe they were even transported. But worst case scenario, they could double move turn 1 to about right there with a speed 2 move. And let's say that our bus was in a line of sight blocking position after turn 1. The way that you kind of want to sequence this is you have to make sure with Shadow Collective that you get orders on your buses. The buses are one of the few units in Shadow Collective that don't have independent tokens, so they're a great target for your orders. So let's say that I played the generic 2-pip. I would be able to put an order on my bus and another bus, and then as soon as I pull a core unit, I could activate this. However, typically with your heavier hitting units, you really want to wait. Something silly would it would be silly for me to just move this unit out in the open early round. So make sure that you're waiting, kind of prolonging that strike with those that forward strike with those units, so they're not just being thrown out in the open. However, in this instance, if there was, let's say that one of these stormtroopers, let's say this stormtrooper unit has already activated, now might be a good time to pounce onto this one if there was no other threatening units to my Black Sun. What I could do is I could then, after this unit activates, I could go with my Black Sun, could move to here. Let's say that I had the shotgun guy in here. I have too many guys here. With my shotgun guy, they can pop over to the other side of the bus and they can take a shot into these stormtroopers. I'm now reducing the effectiveness of that unit because we're removing stormtroopers before they have activated. When possible, always shoot unactivated units. Now, let's say the stormtroopers react, they may pick up a black sun or two, depending on how many we were able to kill. We won't roll dice or anything like that, but the black suns throw a lot of dice and are fairly powerful. My next, in response to the stormtroopers moving, because I placed an order on my bus could then activate. It has reposition. It can pivot a little bit, move again, and now we're blocking that stormtrooper unit next round from being able to shoot into our black sun. Now, sure, with just 2 units on the table, it's easier said than done. But this is just the general concept. Of blocking like that, and being able to move through vehicles makes them a lot easier to use. Another thing that I really like to do with vehicles, especially when I'm focusing on line of sight blocking, is taking standbys. Standbys on these ground vehicles cannot be stripped. You can't, it's not going to gain suppression. It has a large base that we can measure range 2 off of. And what a standby does is if another unit potentially would move into a threatening range of my black sun, I may be able to spend that standby to reposition the bus to block that unit that has moved in. It may feel bad not spending a standby to shoot, but it's going to keep my black sun safe, who are my heavy hitters, who I really need to stay alive in this Shadow Collective list. The Rebels also have access to the bus, just like the Shadow Collective does. However, I don't think that Rebel bus builds are, well, I know they're not, because they don't have access to the same pilots or crew members that the Shadow Collective does, making these less effective offensively than others. I mean, the quad laser is good. You've got impact 2, but still it's 6 non-surging black dice. I think that there's worth in just taking these, maybe even naked, and maybe putting hacked comms on them. So if they're at range 1 of an enemy unit, they get an order to help you out with order control when you're playing Rebels, because that's going to be the biggest issue with playing vehicles in Rebels is your order control. To use vehicles as line of sight blockers, you really need to get an order. You're not going to be attacking round 1 and using your vehicle to block line of sight for that unit, but this is more of a round 2 idea, round 2, 3, and so on. You are going to be hard pressed to get an order onto your vehicles with Rebel lists, because a lot of your command cards are going to be character focused, especially if you're bringing units like Bad Batch or Han or Sabine. Those are typically not going to be cards where you're putting orders on your vehicles, so that hacked comms can help you out. Again, the dead giveaways that pair well with this would be your Bad Batch, your Han Solos, your Sabines, because they're going to be able to peekaboo, meaning move from one side of the bus to the other side, shoot, and pop back out of line of sight. Bad Batch even gets an aim for doing that, and if you get at range 1, Hunter can do his free knife thing, and you're just you're moving there. That's a really effective way to use that vehicle. Same concept if you needed to just move a unit to the other side. Make sure that you have an order on that bus, so then the bus can move after your opponent takes an activation to block line of sight to your unit that is popped out. Fleet Troopers are another decent option for this, because they could, if you were later in the round or your opponent was more aggressive, you could just double move and charge into a unit with your Fleet Troopers through the bus after being out of line of sight. So that is another effective way. I also like to use, I've also been really enjoying the ATRTs. Now, I will say the ATRTs are less, I would say the ATRTs are, if you're looking for line of sight blockers, ATRTs aren't it for a unit, but they could be that for a character, for a single model character. Personally, I'm all about the flamethrowers. You're gonna get Scout 1 out of them, so they're gonna get really, really far. This could pair well with like a Sabine who's speed 3. So that is the distance potential for an ATRT turn 1. And if you are playing, let's say that you're playing like a 13 act list that has Sabine, you could open with the generic 3 pip if you had it. And right here could be your post turn 1 positioning. If you were able to get, let's say you were able to get an order on your ATRT and onto Sabine, you could save them for last, hopefully out activating your opponent, and you're in a really good spot for Sabine and for that ATRT. As far as maybe not maybe not out in the open, but you have the potential to get into a really good spot and a spot potential to be really aggressive because of these fast moving units. And you're really looking at threat saturation when you're looking at charging these ATRTs with flamethrowers and running heroes behind them, making your opponent make difficult decisions about what threat to shoot first. And of course, don't forget about sleeper cell in this whole equation. Obviously with Scout, your sleeper cells can get really far up the board really fast. They also would appreciate a bus helping block them. The last thing I'll say about the bus is on bunker assault and a couple other, I believe, primary objectives, you can actually double contest objectives. So that's why I think that there's a case for running the buses naked in Rebels, because they are just walls for your army, and they could also potentially contest a couple points, really forcing your opponent to have to deal with a unit that isn't reducing your offensive output, which can be a hard pill to swallow, to shoot a unit that's literally not shooting them back. They're not, by shooting the bus, they're not whittling down your offensive capacity, just your defensive capacity, which could be in your favor, depending on the other choices that you had presented them. Let's talk about the clones. The clones have the ATRTs. You could apply similar tactics to what we talked about with the Rebel ATRTs. The Republic ATRTs aren't going to block line of sight for a whole unit, but maybe for a single mini, for some of your lightsabers as they're getting in. Anakin doesn't need an ATRT to block, he can just go where he wants, but maybe your Yoda has not had his comrade Chewbacca to carry him in and needs a little something to hide behind on the way in. An ATRT could achieve that function for ol' Yodester. The ISP is an interesting option. Cody double ISP has been something that I've tried. I think I might even have a battle report somewhere for that one. It's definitely an interesting option, especially with the secondary that hands out observation tokens and the pilot that hands out observation tokens. I played a double beam ISP list that was a lot of fun with the observation token pilot, and there were observation tokens everywhere. You pair that with Cody's command cards that do shenanigans with observation tokens, that gets really interesting really fast. And the base is also small enough to where you can really you can move through it with a unit. So let's say again that the clones are a little bit better at order control. So let's say that you had let's say that your ISP moved up twice, or maybe not twice, but just at a decent location. Let's say that you had a 5 squad with a Z6 and an extra dude. You've got just a jam-packed clone trooper unit who is fairly safe. Now, I mean, a 7-man unit is going to be harder to block line of sight for, but you could potentially, depending on how your opponent positions themselves, you could potentially block an entire unit behind an ISP, and then again, you're doing the peekaboo game. So you got to make sure that you get an order on your ISP, you got an order on your 5s unit, you wait as long as you can, round 2, round 3, whatever round you're in, you wait as long as you can, and then you pop out with your unit. They pop a shot into whatever unit they need to, and then when your ISP activates again, guess what? It gets a free pivot because it's a notch-based trooper, and it's just going to slide that way and pretend I didn't bump anything there and made space for it. But you get the picture. Kind of going towards the end of that round with that unit, if at all possible, and then immediately activating a vehicle, following that to move and block line of sight. I can already hear you in the comments saying, what about the Saber tank? The Saber tank does exist. It's just not doing well right now. It's just meh. It's super cool model. Definitely have it on the shelf. The problem with the larger round bases is you can't move through them, all the way through them with the Speed 2 tool. You know what, let's just get it out. This base is so large that you can really only move from corner to corner. You can't move through it. Whereas with the smaller base of the ISP, you can completely move from one end to the other of an ISP. So that's not going. It's going to be a larger line of sight blocker, and you'll be able to move through it. Whereas this guy, you're really only going to be able to move from like corner to corner. Which movement is so much more important now in 2.6 that I think it's really important that you're able to do that. The same thing is why. The same reason is why I'm a little bigger on on everything but the AAT for the Separatist right now, just because of that base size of the AAT compared to the others. Let's talk about ground vehicles for the Empire. Now, you have two options. You have the Gav tank and you have the ATST. The Gav's in a rough spot right now. Transport, while transport is, I think, a pretty strong thing for Shadow Collective and Separatists, I think that that the Empire doesn't really have anything that is just a big transport threat. I mean, if you're transporting, maybe you're transporting the Royal Guard, maybe you're transporting some Stormtrooper Riot squadrons. Those would be the things that you're transporting, but there was an IRG list at LVO in the top 8 of one of the tournaments. I don't remember which one. I don't think they're bad. It's just the Gav tank just doesn't have the offensive output that an ATST potentially does, and the point cost is still pretty high. I do like it. It's not terrible because you can also do the double contest thing with it. That is a nice feature. The base is also a good size that you could move all the way across it. So that does have some things going for it. However, by far the best ground vehicle for the Empire is the ATST. You can really kit these things out to be more focused on close range. You can kit them out to be focused on range 4. You can do a lot of different things with them. I think the other thing that's interesting about Empire is you have a lot of ways to get standbys onto these vehicles. You could potentially get 2 standbys onto an ATST per turn. Well, not per turn, but there are some there's some turns where you could get standbys onto those vehicles. The first would be with Moff Gideon's 3-pip. You can get a standby onto that ATST, so that would be a good turn 2, 3 play, or a turn 3 play. where, and maybe turn 2 if your opponent's being hyper aggressive and you're being hyper aggressive. You could drop that standby card on there, getting some extra attacks. Or again, like we talked about back with Shadow Collective, you're spending those standbys to reposition your line of sight blockers and keep your shooty units safe. One example of a shooty unit that you might want to protect is Scout Troopers. Maybe you're playing Tempest Force and you are wanting to get your scouts up in there with some sonic mine or whatever those things are called. You could hide them fairly well behind an ATST. It also has that nice small base where you can move the entire unit through, pop through, and shoot. And then the ATST could activate following that and just move to the other side, blocking line of sight to those Scout Troopers. After that Gideon 3-pip, you could, if you had Veers in your list, you could also guidance a standby for that ATST. So you can't accumulate multiple standby tokens, but after the standby got burnt from Gideon, you could have Veers then give another standby. I'm not recommending that you go build tons of Gideon Veers lists. I'm just thinking out loud for you if you just really want to get this ATST on the table. The other option that you can do is you can use that ATST as a line of sight blocker for Vader. Let's say that you infiltrated Vader. Our ATST's already moved up to the table. Vader can move up right behind this line of sight blocker, right wherever you wanted him. Next turn, he can pop Burst of Speed. Boom, boom, and we're in, boys. So yeah, that's another very valuable option for using your ATST to block line of sight. Now, let's talk about the one that you've all been waiting for. Separatists. Man, oh man, are there some options with Separatists. And as I'm talking, I thought of another one. Kalani is definitely a staple to any list where you're gonna have a lot of vehicles. His Exemplar and his Strategize is just really, really strong whenever you pair it with units that have to take an AI. When you take attack protocols and can spend an aim off of Kalani, and if you could also aim, I mean, that's precise 4 or precise 2, re-rolling 4 dice that you're able to do twice. That's going to be really, really powerful. Or just having multiple dodges for outmaneuver and being able to have or having nimble on the snail tank. I mean, those are some really powerful combinations right there. The other thing that I really like about pairing Kalani is divulging his 3-pip, and it gives you reinforcements. So you can really get a lot of movement out of these things. So like I said earlier in the video, if you were just going for line of sight blocking, you could build a list with 3 Droidicas and 3 Aqua Droids. The amazing thing about Aqua Droids is our infiltrate. So Aqua Droids are just going to be able to just infiltrate right into friendly territory. And then they're just going to be able to march. So we'll take our, sorry, these guys are gray, but they're gonna that's the movement potential for your Aqua Droids turn 1. And now you have a wall to run things up behind. You can run your B2s up. Let's say that you also had, let's say that you had 2 Droidicas, a Crab Droid, and 2 Aqua Droids. Let's say that you also had a B2 squad. Well, because of our scout move from our Crab, we could, or our scouting party, we could give our scouting party to a Beef 2 unit. We got our scout move, we have our first move, and we have our second move. And now we have a massive wall protecting our aqua droids. And if that one gets whittled down, which again, you want to make sure that you are thinking about your order of operations, that you're getting orders onto these things that are diving forward this far. You definitely don't want to spend your first 2 or 3 activations turn 1 moving this far. This is my turn 1 dive, and this is just a massive wall that I've made here. I could even move in my droidicas later, and you know, they could come in wheel mode behind here, and then next turn, while they could stay in wheel mode while they're safe and behind this wall, and then I could bring in a second 4-man aqua unit over here to just make this wall absolutely massive. And then turn 2, these guys could become they could come out of wheel mode and they could become our line of sight blockers. But just use so much line of sight blocking potential. Let's say that you even gave reinforcements to your aqua droids and to your B2s from Kalani's 3-pip divulge. You're going to be able to speed 1 these guys forward at the end of that round. And then you can speed 1 your B2s right up behind them. And then you're just ready to pounce at the end of turn at the end of turn 1. It can get really, really gross really fast. You also have the snail tank that you could work off of. Obviously, you can't transport a oversized squad, but I think that transporting a regular size squad of B2s is just fine as well. So you've got your snail tank that can move to there. Let's say your B2s get out. We'll put our B2s here-ish. You could stop and shoot, or you could just go ahead and move. Probably would want to reposition and kind of position yourself like that in that scenario, but you get the picture. You have a lot of ability. To create walls that your opponent has to shoot through in order to get to your meat units. And Kalani just makes this even better because all he has to do is hang out back here, generate some tokens, and help keep everything alive and hitting really strong. I'd love to hear your list ideas in the comments below about how you can utilize ground vehicles in your army. Thanks for watching, and the next time you tune into Tactics Talk, it'll be a lot better because Colton is way better at this game than me.